On today's video, I get annoyed,
rude,
I get hot and bothered, and I get excited as I take a short hop to the continent with Brussels Airlines. I could have flown with Ryanair from here in Manchester over to Charleroi, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, airport to the south of Brussels, but to get to Ghent from there, it's a bit of a trek, including a bus and a train. So instead, I'm flying with Brussels Airlines today from here at Manchester Airport over to Brussels Airport, and from there it should be a simple, straightforward train journey to my final destination of Ghent. Now, I've been staying here, this is the Holiday Inn Express at Manchester Airport, in a room that, well, I can only describe as being practical. It's very functional, it's clean, the bed was comfy and I actually slept very well, but there are some maintenance issues with the room. The TV didn't work, the wallpaper around the bed is starting to peel, and I've got a loose toilet roll handle as well, so it's a little bit dated and tired, but never mind that. I've had a good night's sleep, I've had breakfast, I'm fully fueled for the day, so let's get over to the airport. Right, I'm in the car, heading off to the car park where I'm going to drop my car for 8 days now. See, I checked in online with Brussels Airlines yesterday and they allocated me a aisle seat, and I tried to swap my seat to a window, but it declined 3 different cards. No amount of money's tried to be taken from my card, so I actually think it's more of an issue on their side than mine. So when I get to the airport, I'm gonna speak to check-in and just see if I can swap my seat. It's worth a try, right? Let me know if you've had this issue with Brussels Airlines before too. Now, I parked at APH, which is 2 junctions up the M56 from the airport. It's very easy to reach and drop the car off, and then it's a short bus ride to the terminals. Brussels Airlines used the shiny new Terminal 2 at Manchester, which at 9 AM on a Saturday morning was pretty quiet and chilled, as the morning rush of departures from the likes of TUI and Jet2 had all left. The check-in hall at Terminal 2 is much improved compared to what it was, and as luck would have it, there was no queue at the check-in desks either. Well, that was pretty easy, through in about 10 minutes and chanced it at the Brussels Airlines check-in desk, and I managed to bag myself a window seat. Apparently plenty of seats left available. And the agent did it for me free of charge too. Happy days. Anyway, despite being under the 3rd phase of a huge transformation project as of 2024, Terminal 2 is looking lovely, with plenty of shops, restaurants and bars. I feel like I'm in Meadowhall, not an airport. As I'm on my Ollibobs, I went to the pub for the obligatory airport pint, forking out just shy of £7 for the privilege. Cheers to that. I was a bit late getting to the airport as the car park bus took way longer than I thought, so after a pint in the bar, my plane had already landed and I had to go over to the gate. So I'm sorry if you were expecting any airport plane spotting from this video. My gate was A12, which happens to be the furthest gate away. It's a good 10-minute walk from the main waiting area where the shops and bars are. Although it's a bit of a trek, the windows did give some really good views of a Singapore A350 that was waiting to depart to Houston, and a Hong Kong bound Cathay Pacific A350. Now, I've actually given Manchester Airport quite a bit of stick in previous videos, but in all honesty, today has been an absolute pleasure. Only took me 10 minutes to get through security. Wasn't busy after security either. You could easily find somewhere to grab a bite to eat or drink.
And welcome to your Cathay Pacific flight CX216, our one-world service bound for our home, Hong Kong. We will soon start our journey today. Please be seated and bear with us for a few moments as we explain how...
Until I was rudely interrupted, I was going to give Manchester Airport a bit of credit. Terminal 2's alright, and dare I say, on this occasion it was a pleasure. My Manchester airport experiences lately have mostly been Terminals 1 and 3, which I do hope have a wrecking ball taken to them soon. It had been quite the walk over to the gate, so a little sit down was needed as it was prepared for boarding. It was here that I got the first glimpse of today's A319 that'll take me down to Brussels, OOSSL. This 22-year-old bird started flying for Frontier Airlines in the States in 2002, before coming to Brussels Airlines in 2016. It's not the best view of the aircraft though, I'll be honest, but there was some good views on the other side of the pier looking over the airfield and this Singapore A350. Boarding for the 11:10 departure began at 10:40. The usual formalities of those with young children, business class, Star Alliance, blah 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 were called first, before the cheap seats that I was sat in were called for boarding. And on first glance, this seat had seen better days. This was seat 9A and looked a little bit lumpy. That said, sitting down, I guess appearances can be deceiving because it was actually pretty comfy, and look at that legroom. Other seat features included a coat-tuck, which I always appreciate, a simple fold-down tray table, and an old-fashioned literature tray. There's a perfect window seat view too from 9A, no crazy contortionisms needed here to look out the window. So I think I may have a row of free to myself. Here's hoping. It was really quick to board, but it was an agonising wait to see if anyone would come to claim the two seats at the side of me.
Morning, welcome aboard to Brussels Airlines.
I had what can only be described as a hot flush the second I sat down on the plane. It was so warm, and although there were air vents in the panel above, the AC wasn't on just yet. Then the announcement came. Boarding completed. Would you look at that? 3 glorious seats all to myself. Although it looked to be a light load on today's flight and most rows did have empty seats on them. The plane pushed back at 11:09 and the airport was quiet, so the taxi over to runway 23 left passed very quick. After a quick taxi out to the runway, it was a takeoff into a beautiful autumnal Manchester morning. We were airborne at 11:26 AM and the cabin crew wasted no time in getting to work on the in-flight service. These hops across the channel are super quick, but service started with business class at the front of the plane. For us back in economy, it's buy on board, which is standard in Europe these days regardless of the carrier. Brussels Airlines offers a variety of sandwiches, drinks, snacks and meal deals. It was serviced with a smile this morning though, presumably the light load on this flight adding to the crew's enjoyment too. I went for a coffee, which I suppose I drink more to pass the time to be honest. Flights this short aren't even worth starting an episode of anything on Netflix, I find. And the coffee verdict? Nice and comfy seat, like, and legroom is probably some of the best legroom I've had in economy class anywhere. I don't know whether the agent at Manchester Airport gave me extra legroom, but I'm very, very grateful, even if it is for an hour. After a left turn immediately after takeoff, today's routing took us straight down the middle of England, bypassing the wonderful likes of Stoke-on-Trent, Birmingham and Northampton as we cruised towards London. Over the capital there was another left turn to take us along the Thames estuary and over the North Sea before reaching land again at Ostend on the Belgian coast. Cruising altitude for today's flight, 29,000 feet. It was a beautiful, crisp, late September morning and not a cloud in the sky, which gave some really great views out the window. A trip to the loo before landing is always needed, especially when all I'd drunk that morning was coffee and beer. I was probably the only person on the flight to use the loo due to the short flight time, as it was absolutely spotless. There was nothing fancy or any amenities, it was just functional and did the job. Hiya! Not much more I can say, to be honest, it did the job. Anyway, view of the free layout of the lightly loaded cabin. Most people had a row of free to themselves, except the few rows of business class at the front of the plane, which looked to be full and therefore only had the middle seat blocked out. For once, funnily enough, I think I had more space and room in economy. And a steady descent down into a very autumnal Brussels afternoon. The weather went from sunshine to wind to rain. We had it all as we came down into the Belgian capital. We descended down past my final destination of Ghent and the town of Mechelen before making a 180-degree turn to line up on runway 25 left. Welcome to Brussels. It's always good to be back in Belgium. It was a short taxi over to the gate and the airport seemed really quiet. There wasn't much movement going on around the airfield, apart from this AJet 737, which I'll take an educated guess in that it was heading over to Istanbul. I wish the same could be said on the plane though, as people just decided to start getting their stuff out of the overhead compartments as the plane was still taxiing. I was even more surprised that the cabin crew did nothing even though the plane was still moving. I get people may have had tight connections, but I suppose the joke was on them when we docked at the A gates and had to be bussed over to the B gates. And I've arrived into Brussels. It's a pretty good 59-minute flight. Let's go get my train. Now strangely, the last time I flew to this part of the world was a few months before, and I flew Ryanair from Manchester to Eindhoven in the Netherlands. That flight was also 59 minutes long, and I had a row of free to myself then as well. Pretty strange coincidence. Fresh off the bus and into the B gates, then came the walk to the border. God, this is quite the walk. Jesus. I feel like I'm walking the full length of the airport. Yeah, I actually was walking the full length of the airport though. It was quite the trek down the entire B gates pier to reach a very empty Belgian border. No Brexit queue here. Straight through in a matter of minutes, and I had no luggage to collect either, which was a bonus, but for those that did, it looked to already be on the carousel. Although the airport so far had been fairly quiet, coming through arrivals the airport was absolutely packed. I honestly couldn't believe that this was the same airport. So that was really quick and easy, through the border in a matter of a couple of minutes, got my train ticket, so onwards to Ghent. Nice and easy. A little too easy. And this was the main reason for choosing to fly Brussels Airlines to Brussels instead of Ryanair to Charleroi. The train station's directly underneath the terminal, and it'll take you to almost anywhere in Belgium or even over to nearby countries. In no time at all, I was sat on my train headed to Ghent. So, Brussels Airlines. Much like my stay at the Holiday Inn, they were functional and did the job, although maintenance is clearly better on Brussels Airlines than at that hotel. But as an airline they are a bit bland and sterile, and I can't help but think that that's the influence of the Lufthansa group that own them. It was an on-time flight, an old but surprisingly comfy seat that had excellent legroom, a decent cup of coffee, but it just wasn't the most memorable service, or memorable flight for that matter, but it was only an hour. I paid a grand total of £82.28 for this one-way flight, which included the standard hand luggage allowance of an 8-kilo wheelie suitcase and a personal item for under the seat in front of you. This was only about £10 more than what Ryanair would have charged for Charleroi when you add on their extortionate baggage fees, so the ease of having the train station underneath, and that fantastic legroom, was worth the extra tenner in my opinion. Thanks for watching, see you again soon.